following message was recorded live at the Word of Life Center.
And sometimes we have the right why, but we aren't willing to get on our knees and pray and let our soul get to the place where our soul is crushed so that the oil of our life can come out and our why and His will can come together for your plans to succeed. I want to just say some things this morning that are just for you today. It's not, anything except for this, except for just to say that your why in your life will not happen if you don't get on your knees and find His will. And when you find His will on your knees, oftentimes it'll be bent. In other words, it will look different when it comes out the other side of actually getting done. But when your why and His will come together and it's bent to His will, and it's His will and your why, all of a sudden your plans will come to a different place of succeeding. God doesn't answer the first time sometimes. Stefan, run up here quick. Vince, if you can come up here for a second. Which one of you wants to be God the Father this morning? Right there. There we go. There's God the Father. It's God the Father, and here's Jesus' friends. And I guess I'm Jesus in this. I don't think Jesus would wear this jacket. All right. But here's Jesus in the garden, and this is where you are a lot of times. When your will is getting bent to His will. He goes and He's got to pray. And when He goes and prays, His will, God's will doesn't change. He says, will you take this cup from me? And God's will won't change. And so He goes back to the comfort of His friends. I don't know about you, but sometimes when God isn't answering my prayer, sometimes I run back to my friends. And sometimes that's the worst place for you to go. Because your friends will either tell you, it's okay, this and that and the other thing, and the best thing for your friends to be is asleep. When you're in a time of pressure, that is the truth. Because sometimes your friends will convince you out of God's will. Sometimes your friends will dummy down what God has really called you to do. Sometimes your friends, and man, if I get around the wrong friends in this season of life, some of my friends will say, you're crazy. What are you doing thinking about building this massive kids facility? You don't have enough money. You don't have enough this. You don't have enough that. Well, do you know what? The best thing I can have is a whole bunch of friends that are asleep on me, that don't say anything. And he goes to God, and God's will won't change. And he goes to his friends, and they're sleeping. So guess what happens? Is he goes back to God, and God's will won't change again. And he's back to his friends again. And before you know it, he's back and forth until what comes out of him is he says, this guy isn't going to help me. This guy isn't changing. The only person that's going to change is me. And so I'm going to get to the place before God where God is squishing me and my friends aren't moving and helping me at all. And I'm going to get to the place where God, through what He wants to do in my life, squishes me to the place where I finally bend my will to God's will. Thank you, guys. Would you guys give these guys a hand this morning? Your will gets bent to His will. And let me just tell you this morning, it's not in my notes, but if you're here this morning and you're going to the wrong friends, sometimes the thing you need the least is friends, when your friends aren't helping. But here, Jesus goes here, and he goes there, and he goes here, and he goes there, and he goes here, and finally he says to his friends, go ahead and sleep. Have a nap. Rest. God did what he needed to do. My will is bent to his will. And what was done on the cross was done before the cross ever happened. Jesus didn't win in a public display of power. He won in a private display of prayer.